Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. I have my voice back, which is pretty exciting. Of course, now my husband's sick, so, you know, at least we have one parent with a voice in the house. We are going to do a Daffodil today, and I'm going to use some waterproof pens. You can use whatever waterproof pen you have. I'm using some Pitt pens here. I'll link all the things that I'm using in the video description so you can find them. So this actually came from a set that also had a brush pen, and I think I'm going to use, there's fine, super fine, and medium, and I think I'm going to start off with a super fine because that's the smallest tip. You can also use microns or even a fine tip like an ultra fine Sharpie for this. And I'm going to draw a daffodil. So since I'm going right in with pen, I'm going to just try to draw accurately right off the bat. Now one thing, like, this is the opening of the front part of the daffodil. So when I'm drawing and I'm not going in with a pencil first, I just try to keep kind of my lines very light and not completely connected and solid right off the bat, because I want to make sure that if I'm not accurate, that I can kind of go in and fix things if I need to. So we're gonna have one petal that's kind of hiding a little bit back behind that one. So I'm just kind of, actually, this is another tip, I'm just kind of drawing on the edge of the pen too, so that I end up not really making a very good mark. You could also use like an older pen that might be a little dried out. That would be a great way to kind of avoid making any errors here. I like to have a turned petal here and there. I think that's kind of pretty. I'll do one here. I'm just kind of getting my hand out of the way. Another turned petal would be nice. Now we'll put one here. There. So we've got our basic shape in. I want to get like just kind of like the little kind of hip area and that little bit of a husk that the daffodils have, and then just pull a stem down, and then just probably just a couple of those thick leaves. And just kind of add them a little bit over a bit so that they balance out a little bit. Now I'm going to go in with my fine tip one, which is a little bit thicker, and I am going to define things a little bit. I think I want to make that kind of in the middle a little bit more. Maybe make it fan out a little bit. I can be a little bit more deliberate with my marks. And this is actually an older set. These pens do hold up really well. I've had this set for quite a while. So I think if you take care of your pens, they do generally last you quite a while. So I also like to put in a little bit of detail, kind of like shading, not cross hatching, but I like to get like just kind of like single hatching, I guess. I'd say just kind of linear strokes, especially since these petals are kind of crepey, so I want to shade inside here. So it's really going to make what we do with a watercolor very simple and easy, so because we're doing a lot of our work right now with a pen. You could use a dip pen. You may need to just kind of go with the flow a little, quite literally. If you're using a dip pen, if you do get a dab or a splop here and there, just try not to worry about it. Trying not to get my hands in the way. You can put as little or as much as you like. When I have like those two petals are kind of overturned, so underneath I like to do some more shading, and I also like to make sure that when I put my lines down for when I'm shading in a linear fashion like this, that those lines go with the shape of my petal, the way it's folding, and that just makes it kind of have this movement that that looks really nice. So if I'm going around the back there, see how I'm gonna put that center vein in, and then my shading around it is still gonna follow kind of that loop and turn of the petal. It just gives it kind of like a more elegant look. I'm kind of reaching around awkwardly here when I am sketching, because I want you to be able to see what I'm doing. That's why I'm moving my hand. I typically would work a little bit quicker than this. Get that center vein, then you can pull your shadows out to either side of them, and it kind of gives it a little place of, it gives it like a little bit of a reference point, and then I can darken up that bottom line there. So you can see, whoops, see now, see that line right there, that is way too straight, so I'm going to see if I can do something to maybe curve it back out a little bit. So, you know, that's why you really want to go with the shape. I made that way too dark now, but hopefully with my, with the other shading I do on the other petals, I can kind of disguise it or just make it seem a little bit less pronounced. Do a lot of kind of optical fixing when we're doing pen and ink, because sometimes we make mistakes, and you know, you can either throw the picture away or you can push through it. With watercolor, your mistakes kind of stay with you through a piece, but I think it also shows the journey that the artist has taken as they're creating, so it doesn't bother me that much to have like mistakes in watercolor or have pencil marks showing or pen marks showing. And I'm definitely more of a scribblier drawer, so pen and ink is not something I do all that much because I like sketchy lines, so I don't do a very traditional pen and ink. I'm thickening that out, making that like a center vein on that leaf. And the quicker you go, the finer your lines will be. I'm going for the look of kind of like a vintage botanical print here. And we will see if I achieve it. Okay, so I feel like that's enough with the sketching, maybe a little bit more, because I don't have anything going on that one. There. I think that's pretty good. That line's not too short in the back because I never went over it with this pen. So I never used the medium one. That's alright, you don't need to use every pen you have. There's also like a brush tip that comes with that, but I tend not to use them on when I'm doing pen and ink for watercolor, but that's up to you. You can if you want to. And this is the brown. If you want a more determined or more, just a brighter look, you could use, or darker look, you could use the bold. Now these are the koi, this is the koi set of 24 watercolors that I'm using here. I know a lot of you guys have it, so I wanted to use it because I haven't used it in a while. And also it's a very inexpensive set to get started with. It comes with a water brush that you can take apart. Just don't throw away this part right there, because to put this back, in the case you need to take the brush apart, and that stopper keeps the water in there so you can actually load it up with water before you go. So just make sure you don't throw that away. I am just grabbing some of this kind of lemon yellow there. And I also recommend if you get this set, save the color key on the back of the box and just put it in a baggie like I did and tape it to your box. That way you'll know what color you're painting with. It's not really that big of a deal, that big of a deal if you're painting by eye, but if you ever want to tell anybody what color you're using, then you're going to want to have that. And you can see that my ink is not running from below, so that's good. So you can just simply fill things in with watercolor like this. And that'll look just fine and dandy because you have the pen lines for your shadowing and stuff. But if you want to have a little bit more difference in color, what you can do is like you'd wet this, like wet an area, and then you could like drop in a darker color here towards the shadowy area. So you put in like a darker yellow around the edges. Actually, I want to do that in here too a little bit. And then you can put in your lighter color. And actually, you could just squeeze this out on a rag to dry it. That's what I'll do. I was just rinsing it. Well, I got my bucket here and I don't have rag handy. I'm still getting used to filming downstairs again. I don't have everything right where it needs to be yet. And then you can put your lighter color in like that, and then it just gives you more definition. If I tip it, that way you can see without the glare. It just gives it more of a rounded appearance. And then if you're going to do this technique, I recommend you you switch to another petal that's not touching the ones next to it, because otherwise, like if I painted that area, that color is going to wick up into my lighter part of the flower. So I'm just going to go over here to a different portion. If you're worried that your ink isn't dry, you can like blast it with a hair dryer or a heat tool or something to make sure it's dry before you before you start painting as well, because that will help set the ink too. If you're not sure if it's waterproof or not, that does help it a little bit. This lemon there. So basically what I'm using is kind of like a lemon yellow and either like an Indian yellow or, yeah, what do they call it? They call it permanent yellow deep, but it's basically just a warmer, darker yellow. And you can go around and do that. While that's drying, I think I'm going to just kind of skip over here and get this stem, which is a very light green. So I'm going to wet this first because it kind of fades into this beige color. For the beige, I think I'm just going to take a little bit of that burnt sienna and just kind of fade it out. It's actually called light red as far as this paint set is concerned. I'm going to grab a little bit of this light green, mix it with a little bit of that burnt sienna or light red to make it a little bit more beigey gray instead of red. Mix a little bit more of that red in there. Could actually add a little of that warm yellow in there too if I wanted to. Warm it up a little bit. And then I'm going to do the green down the stem, and since it's already wet, it's going to lighten it up a little bit. You can see that's a really vibrant color. Now these colors are nice. The only drawback to the set, I mean, it's budget friendly. It is seems to be highly pigmented, high quality, is that it doesn't tell you what the pigments they use are. So that's the only drawback to this particular set if you're worried about fading. I haven't had anything fade, and I use this a lot in the summer. I keep it in my car, but you know, it's something to be aware of. But you know, then again, I saw this set this morning on Amazon for 20 bucks, and I'll put a link in the video description. I am now an Amazon associate. They finally let Mainers join on April 1st. I've been trying to join for years, so I'm really excited about that. Because especially with all these advertisers boycotting YouTube, it's really great that we have options on how we make our living. I'm adding a little bit of this darker green. This is permanent green deep, and I'm going to add that into the shadow area here. So I'll put a link to that. I'll also put a link to the set at Simon Says Stamp and Blitsy. That way if they sell out or if they jack the price up on Amazon, which I know they do that sometimes, especially if a product gets popular, you have some other options. Price-wise, I think Amazon was cheapest today, and then after that Blitsy was probably second, and then Simon Says Stamp was a little bit more expensive. So you have some options there, and depending on where you live, where they ship to and all that jazz. I know that Blitsy ships worldwide, which is handy. And there you can see I did kind of like, I painted on wet and I got the blend just by going dark, medium, light, just kind of dragged it out a little bit. So I wouldn't want to go to that next because that's going to bleed into that petal and I'm going to lose my definition. So I'm going to go, I think I'll go up to this petal here. Let me just make sure that my brush is clean by squeezing out a little water and looking. I don't seem to have anything there. So I'm going to go and wet this petal. Whenever you're in doubt, if you're getting close to another petal and you're afraid that it might wick the color in, just leave like a little sliver of dry paper and that will that'll protect you from that happening. I'm going to go ahead and put this dark yellow there. That's a pretty color. I think I might have even had a little bit of color running when I first began, but then by the time I, got back up here to these petals, everything was completely dry. So it doesn't hurt to give your ink a little extra time to dry or hit it with a heat tool for a minute. I'm just going to tip this on its edge a little bit because I do notice that I am getting a little bit of glare. I haven't filmed downstairs and well, I actually filmed yesterday, but I haven't even looked back at the footage for that. For a while, so getting reused to it, and I'm filming on the opposite side of my table, which you may have seen on my my recent craft room cleanup video that I shared. I was going back to filming on the back side of my table, which I like a lot better. But it does take you takes you a while to get your bearings after you haven't, done that in a while. I'm going with my darker colors here next to where I put the shading. So this is another tip. If you're a rubber stamper, and you have stamps and they have like this line work on them, that's typically where your shading goes. So if you're coloring something from a stamped image and you're not exactly sure where you're supposed to be darker or lighter, whether you're coloring watercolors or markers or colored pencils, look for that shading. That will generally tell you where your darker colors need to be. That lighter, cooler color. And I just think I think it's pretty to have two different colors in there and let them blend together. Because I think these petals have a lot more life than that centerpiece I did where I just kind of went in dry with color already on my brush. I think when you add the water first, it does give it a little bit extra dimension. So here I'm just going to wet this portion. And it's not shiny, that part's not shiny. Hopefully it's not real damp. I might leave just a little sliver of light there just to be safe. And of course my dark is going to go on this back side where I have that shading. Oh, now I've got glare on that, so I'm going to tip it back down. I probably still sound a little froggy. Sorry about that. I know, like, I don't have the high part of my voice working too well yet. There. See, and it just left a little smidgen of white in there. I don't even know if you can see it. It's pretty small, but just to kind of keep that area protected. And I'm gonna wet. I think I'll just wet this bottom part because I do have a little. Oh, this whole top part actually is lighter. Let's do this whole top part first. I forgot where I looped it. Where I looped my petal around. And let's go in with the light first. We'll put our light up here. We can just kind of wick it down, pick up our darker color. There we go. And we will want this to dry before we go in and do that part. I think I might be able to sneak in and get that green though. Actually, I'm going to keep that yellow on my brush. I'm going to grab some of this darker green, mix it in there because I do want kind of that darker earthy color. And I'm actually going to turn this so I can approach it a little bit easier. I am going to make sure I leave a little bit of a sliver of space between that leaf, the petal I just painted. And go in there and put that on there. Now, you can always do your pen and ink afterwards, especially if you don't have any waterproof pens. Maybe you're just using like a felt tip marker or something. You can wait till your paint's dry and you can go in and do that afterwards if you want to. There's nothing wrong with that at all. So just keep that in mind if you are, you know, you don't have very many supplies, maybe you don't have any waterproof pens, but you still want to try this technique, you can absolutely do it after. Now for these two, everything should be dry around them so I can wet them both at one time and paint them both at one time, and that's a little bit of a time saver, so that's nice. And I'm going to go in with my lighter color. Doesn't really matter what you do first. I'm just going to go in and throw in some of that lighter spring green. It's actually called Permanent Green Light, I believe. It's funny, different paint companies give their paints different names, so that's another reason it's really nice if they put pigment information, because you can tell what you're painting with even if the color's different. I am going to want a little edge of light there, I think. Go in here. We're almost done too. This is a nice little warm-up, actually, is what this is. It's a nice little warm-up painting for your day. If you don't have a lot of time to create, if you got 20 minutes, you can do this. If you just draw it with a pencil if you don't have a waterproof pen. Go over it with a pen later if you want to. Nothing wrong with that. As I said, I will link up everything in the video description so you can find it, and you can kind of shop around a little bit, see who's carrying it for the best price if you don't have it. But as always, use what you have. You don't need to have these watercolors. You can use whatever watercolors you happen to own, and it's going to work just fine. And the only other thing I need to put in there is that yellow. I know I want it pretty dark, so I think, and it's not very big of a space, so I'm just going to go right in with that dark yellow. Add it close to the base of the cone part and under the turn. I'm going to clean my brush and go in with the yellow, the lighter yellow rather, and just do that. So why don't I pause this, dry it, and show you how it looks once it's all dry. Here it is all dry. I'm going to go in with that medium pen, the one I said we didn't use before. It's a little bit thicker, and I'm going to define a few lines. And if you want to, you can do that. And see, I just also wanted to show you that yes, you can totally go in and after the fact put in some lines. You can even go in and put on a background. Maybe I'll do that and share the photo on my blog, thefrugalcrafter.wordpress.com, if it turns out well. But I just wanted to show you that this is a fun technique that you can do with the supplies you have on hand. I'm working on a Strathmore watercolor card. I'll link everything in the video description. And thank you so much for watching. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it. Until next time, happy crafting.